You're watching the Forefront Church video podcast. And wherever you're at viewing online, we just want to say thank you and welcome. And one of the ways that we can help connect with you is we want to hear from you and where you're at and how we can help. And so head over to forefrontchurch.info after the message and click the Connect tab. It's a great way for us to help you along your spiritual journey as you connect with God and learn about Jesus. And so sit back, relax. We hope that you're challenged and encouraged from today's message. Facebook Lives, thank you so much for tuning in. Let us know where you're watching from and how we can help you. Head over to that forefrontchurch.info page. Click that Connect tab. We'd love to hear how we can help you in your journey with God. But 10 a.m., how are we doing today? You hear that, guys? They love being here. And so if you're traveling, we are glad you're here. If you're from far away, we're glad you're here watching online. But if you're here in town, come on and join us. We're a little rowdy and crazy. Parking's a little bonkers because of the construction, but we here. And so, man, I'm so glad to see you guys as we start a brand new 4-week teaching series called Intentional Encounters. And the reason that we're doing this is because I know as well as you do that being intentional is very difficult. It's very easy to kind of allow life to hit us and then we just respond to what's taking place. Whether that's, things in a relationship, in our marriage or dating. If you guys are in that dating scene, I'm definitely praying for you. I'm so glad I'm out of that. That when it comes to parenting and that your kids go off the rails and you weren't planning on it, and so you're just reacting to what's taking place. The same can be said of our faith. We want our faith to be something where we're not simply reacting to what's taking place, but that we're all along the way having these flagship moments, these markers of how are you and I being intentional. And today's message kind of sets the stage for the next 3 weeks. Instead of getting into the nitty-gritty of things, we're going to kind of fly up and get like a 30,000 feet overview of why should you and I, even in the first place, be intentional in our faith. Now, for some of us this morning, watching online or here, we would say like, man, I'm still checking out this whole God thing. Like, I'm not even certain I believe in him. And if I do, I'm really angry about what's happened in my life. I'm glad you're here. For some of us, we're kind of like, man, I made my decision for Jesus. I got my ticket, so to speak. I'm going to be in heaven. I'm good. I'm glad you're here. Because the temptation is to go, I follow Jesus, I'm all right. I follow Jesus, I'm fine. Like, I don't really need, I can kind of phone it in. The reality is, the moment that we're not intentional, things can go awry. Things can get extremely difficult. And so how can you and I be intentional in our faith? You guys in the room this morning and watching online that are in middle school and high school, this is also for you. Because there's times when you're going through and you're just like, I'm figuring out lockers and classes and that teacher and all the stuff that's going on. I can tell you now that if you build in these habits in these consistent moments now, that you will be someone who will look to generations from now and go, man, that person was changing the world. And my prayer today, before we get into what's happening, is that we would be ready to not hear to respond, but to hear to actually listen, to actually take it in. Because every one of us has walls that we've built up in various ways, whether we follow Jesus or don't, about the church and God and Christians and all of that. And our hope is that we can tear down some of those walls Because let's face it, in society, they don't view Christians very kindly. Christians are usually looked at as judgmental, bigots, just acting very, how can I put this, jerky? Like that is the portrayal. And Christians have a PR problem because the Jesus they follow, Christian, Christ-like, Jesus-like, sometimes we, if you claim faith, don't always act like that. And so how can we be intentional about engaging faith? And that's my prayer this morning. I'd love it if you guys would pray with me as we jump in. God, I thank you for today. We thank you for Jesus. We thank you that we get to be here, no matter where we find ourselves on that spectrum, the journey of faith, whether we're still skeptical of you, God, or whether we have made a decision to follow you, or we find ourselves somewhere in the middle of that. The good news is none of us have arrived, and all of us need your son, Jesus. And so, God, help us today to take a step back, to hand over those walls that we've built up, that you can break those down, and to teach us new and fresh this morning. It's in the name of Jesus we pray together. Amen. Now, one of the things that I know when we learn in general, statistics have shown that it's right around now about like 86, 87% is the most recent statistic, that we're visual learners. And so I like to bring props when we learn because I want us to be able to actually remember. So for some of you, this brings up amazing memories. For others of you, if you're OCD and hate germs, you're like, get it away. Because what do you do with these things? You put your hand on it, you do whatever, you can put your face on it, and you can do that. That's always fun. And I love being able to use props to teach. We did a series on purity and what does that mean to honor God. And one of the things I used was a very large spoon. And I had this person come to me, every time I eat with a spoon, I think of that message. I go, really? Because the whole point of that was that, hey, before we do this whole rules and regulations thing, God wants us to be honorable with our heart. So how are we doing that? And I said, hey, first you hold hands, and then you kiss, and then you spoon, and spooning leads to X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to explain it because you middle schoolers may not have heard all that yet. And so whatever, and so don't spoon is kind of where we got, and we're like, hey, let's not put ourselves in a situation where we do that. And they go, every time I eat it, I think about that message. And I go, good, because you have teenagers now, and you need to have that right here in the forefront. So we learn and we use objects to do that. Now, when I put my hand on this and I put it back, and you can do all kinds of different things, whether it's your face, whether it's a little hang loose, you name it, we can put it on there. But if I were to leave this here, on a scale of 0 to 100, and you guys watching online can chime in here, what are the odds, 0 being it won't happen, 100 being it totally will, that if I walk away, that mysteriously that is over time going to make a like distinct image? What do you guys think? 100. Somebody's like, it totally will happen. 0 being it won't change, or 100 being it will totally have a hand if I just let it sit there. What do you think it will be? 0. You guys online, hopefully you didn't say 100, but why is it that over time it wouldn't just miraculously pop up an image without anybody touching it? Why isn't it going to do that? Because you need to do what? Touch it. You need to engage it. You need to have your hands on the thing. And I'm not going to go over here, and yet, you know what? I read this Bible verse. It said, I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me. If I sit here and I think hard enough about Jesus, that this thing's going to magically do it. I can even sit here and pray all day long. And God's going to go, you know how physics works? Like he's going to be like, you can touch us and that's how the image, or you can pray to me all day long. Yes, God could somebody came up to me and said, God could miraculously move that. Yes, he could. But I think he would go, have common sense, pick it up and move it. And so we could sit here and I could pray all day. I could quote verses at it all day long. It's not going to move. I can even stand really close to it. And it's not going to change. The only time it's going to change is if I actually what? Touch it. You see, I have to be intentional about getting involved with this before it's going to make any movement. It's interesting because when it comes to engaging faith, statistically speaking, because a person who claims faith, on average, reads their Bible 1 to 2 times a month for about 5 minutes. So it's interesting to me that people who claim faith somehow believe that if they just kind of get near God, not engage, not be intentional, but just kind of show up, that something miraculous will happen. And I would say this, that you may have encounters with God, and encounters with God will happen, whether you want to or not. But intentionality will ensure the consistency of how you see God moving. You see, there is a healthy intentionality where I go, all right, you know, I've read the Bible a few times, and I know that God promises certain things, that if I pray to him, that he hears me, that if I honor him by my actions, that he is going to watch over me, that no matter how bad I've been, he still loves me. I know that certain engagement will yield certain things. Why? Because God has unfolded those things, revealed those things in all those books collectively that make the Bible. But I know it starts with intentionality. And you and I could say, all right, well, I'm going to learn it from other people. Like while I do, you know, my title here is pastor. I don't want you to be like, I believe in Jesus because Jason got up there and said, no. My job isn't to make you believe in my faith. My role is to encourage you towards exploring and finding about Jesus on your own. You know, and I hear people say, you know, well, I watching, a famous female, Beth Moore. Like, she puts out all the studies, ladies, and she has all the Bible studies and all the books, and, you know, and everybody's like, oh, I love her studies. I got the same haircut. I'm going to love Jesus more, whatever, and they're going to do all the thing. And like that, surely you can go down that direction, and you'll learn about Jesus. Andy Stanley's a pastor in Atlanta. Like, most pastors around, or Rick Warren out in California. There's pastors that people go, man, if I could teach, like, or have a church, like, do all these things. You know who they are? They're just people. I'm just a person. You see, when you and I take our cues from other people who learned about Jesus the same way, we need to be able to find out about him on our own and understand who he is on our own and be intentional about it. You see, because encounters with Jesus will transform you from your soul to your bones. It will change your life when we are actually intentional. But I hear this a lot. Man, do you know what kind of schedule I got? I just don't feel like it. Like, most of us, when we encounter somebody around town and we bump into them at the store, or, you know, we see them at a school function or whatever, hey, how's it going? Hey, I've been meaning to get up to you, but I've been really busy. We're so busy. Everything's busy. And then we just go, man, you know, it's going to be hard to be intentional because, like, it's Sunday, but you know how hard I work? And so that's why for some of y'all, it was sleeping in. You hit the snooze button a couple times. 11:30, you guys, I know you. Like, they hit it a bunch of times. I don't really feel like it today. I don't really feel like. Here's what I love about church and faith. It is not about how you feel. It is not. It is not like there's certain songs that might stir up something in you, but what if the songs don't stir you up? Oh, I need to go to another church. I need to feel it. I need to feel the movement. I need to raise my hand, and I need to do all that stuff. Like, I get it, but it's not about your feeling. I'm not the best speaker in the world. You might come and be like, man, it's like they had a camera in my house, and they knew everything that was going on. Other weeks, you might be like, that was fine. Like, but it is not about your feeling. Here's the deal. Even when you don't feel like it, because you will wake up and have moments in faith you don't feel like it. Ask somebody who's married. Got real in the room right now. Like, now, if you're newlywed, you have no idea about this conversation, okay? You're like, there's days where you wake up and you don't, it is not like, you're not like really feeling it. And if you're newlywed, you're like, I don't even understand that. I love you. And you're all, give it a year, okay? Like, there are days where you wake up where you have to choose because the kids were up all night, things were you got in a fight, all these things happening. And I have to stress to people, even when it comes to faith, even when you don't feel like it, intentionality fosters moments to see his movement and be what? Refreshed. The other thing that I hear people say, on top of I'm busy, man, I'm really tired. Hear people all the time, I'm busy and I'm tired. Huh, weird. Maybe if you were less busy, you wouldn't be as tired. You go, oh, but you don't understand. I got all this schedule and all these things. I go, what's even more interesting is that God, who never had to rest, gives us a beautiful model of what it means to be intentional when it comes to being refreshed. If you have a Bible, I'd love for you to turn over to Genesis chapter 2. If you don't know your way around the Bible, good news, it's in the front. And so you can open it up right there in the front. It's the first book, chapter 2, the big numbers. And we're going to be on it. If you don't have a Bible, we give them away for free in our lobby. For those of you guys online, more digitally inclined here, you can go over to forefrontchurch.info, swipe over a couple times, and go to the Notes tab. Everything there is right there to be able to help you and follow along today and email those notes back to yourself. And what we see in this example in Genesis 2 is God showing us what it means to be intentional after the account that we see of creation. It says this, verse 1 in chapter 2. So the creation of the heavens and the earth and everything in them was completed. On the seventh day, and we're not here this morning, this is a, remember, 30,000-foot view. This isn't to get in the weeds. For some of you may say, you know what? I don't believe in a literal 7 days. I'm in a more figurative days. For some of you, you're like, no, literal. We are not here to rehash where you land on that. There's great men and women of God on both sides of that who love Jesus. This is not an essential. If you don't land in a certain camp, then you're done. This is not an issue of salvation, but we're not going to, remember, we're big view today. And so on the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, and so he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy because it was the day when he rested from all creation. Now, it's interesting because God's all-knowing, all-powerful, all-present. I find it very difficult to believe, based on what we've been told of God. Remember, it's God, and there's a lot of things we don't understand, that God got done with creation, goes, whew, that was a tough one. Like, he's God. He is God. And so, if God is taking this moment to rest, but God is not indeed tired, then I have to ask myself, this is why when people read the Bible, we read it in context, and we go, all right, I need to understand this more, and what is the next thing underneath it? If God was never tired and yet he rested, then he's trying to paint a picture for you and I that intentional engagement and refreshment is absolutely vital. The writer in Exodus writes again, for the 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth, but on the seventh day he stopped working and was what? Refreshed. And how can we understand this intentionality? Well, the first thing is this, is that refreshment comes from God alone. That if you don't, as we get through our main point, a couple kind of key things in here. This does not come from anything else other than God. Now, I know the pushback from this because as I sit and meet with people and we have these conversations about God and faith and making time, intentionally making time for him and him alone, they go, oh, you know what? And this is the conversation I get into. I find refreshment in other ways. Whether, maybe it's nature, friendship, solitude. I don't need God or to be intentional with him to be refreshed. I love that there's pushback in this. We are not a church where it's just like, we're going to sit there, and if you have any questions, we're going to send you out the door. No, we're going to have moments where things are hard, things are difficult. We're going to wrestle with the topics of the Bible. But in this, it's intellectually dishonest. You want to know why? I find refreshment in other ways, i.e. nature. Sure, I'm sure you find that. Friendship, absolutely. Solitude. I don't need God or to be intentional with him to be refreshed. But let's track back to the beginning of the conversation. I'm really busy and I'm really tired. Okay, so let me get this straight. So you're really busy and you're really tired. And because your schedule is busy, you're trying to fit in anywhere you can because it's not intentional, it's reactive. Time to be outside, Things have been crazy. We just get a quick trip to the beach. Oh, we're crazy. We're going to go up to, the mountains. We're going to head to Charlottesville and Blue Ridge, whatever. We're going to friendship. Oh, man, it's been really busy. You're busy, whatever. Here, can we just get a quick coffee and rush it? We're shoving in these moments because we're tired, we're busy, we're not intentional. These are afterthoughts that are reactive. Solitude, man, I guess I'll get alone because I had a chance. I feel nature calling and the kids are crazy, so I'm going to shut the door and lock it. Even though the fingers are under there, I'm alone, all right? But you're telling me that you don't need God. But what I'm hearing is that you're tired and you're not refreshed. You're busy and you're overwhelmed. So which is that? And you start to unpack that and peel back the layers. You go, well, I actually think I'm not refreshed. I actually feel like I haven't been very intentional because when I do get to these pieces, they're all reactive to a bonkers schedule where I just shove it in wherever I can instead of carving out the time with God and others. And the reality is nature, friendship, solitude, whether it's sitting on the coast or your comfy couch or having brunch with friends, all of that comes from God. It's already from God anyway. So even in the moments of being refreshed in those ways, which are amazing, it comes from God. But we've aimed ourselves in such a way, more often than not, that we really want to set the goal of those gifts that God has given instead of the giver of the gift. And so I go, man, I really want to be, if I have kids, my goal isn't to be an awful parent and have them all end up in jail. My goal is to be an amazing parent and raise human beings that are kind and loving and amazing. If we're in a relationship, our goal isn't to go, how can I have this end up like a dumpster fire? If you're in a relationship, your hope, your goal, your desire is that you would honor God and honor the other person. In all of these facets, we want to go towards those goals, but I think we get so focused on the goal that we miss the one who gave us the goal. And I love the way that Luke McClure puts it. He says, we love the gift more than the giver of the gift. And when we do this, our passion robs our purpose. I see parents who run around everywhere. They're like, oh man, I got to make sure my kids, sports. Hey, I'm like, sports will not save your kids and will not teach them Jesus. It'll teach them great principles, but will it save their soul? I see adults who will plow through and just try to kill themselves in college and in the workplace and do whatever to get the next best thing because their goal is to have a lot of money and be secure and all this thing. And that's a great goal. But are you doing it for the one who gave you life in the first place because you're tired and you're not refreshed? And we have to get intentional. The writer in Jeremiah tells, for long I've given rest to the weary and joy to the sorrowing. The writer in Proverbs, but be not wise in your own eyes. Remember, hey, I don't need God. I don't need to be intentional. I can do it on my own, right? No, do not be wise in your own eyes because for a lot of times, the moment that we just have our blinders on, I can do it on my own, and then a friend jumps in who we will listen to and they go, that's bad. Why? We go, take off that blinder, and there's a car coming. And, the life sends us this thing and just, and everything gets blown up. Don't be wise in your own eyes. Listen to other perspectives, mainly with God. Fear the Lord. And that's not talking about like a trembling and falling back. It's going like, man, I have reverence for you because of how amazing you are. God, you are so good. It's that I want to give you honor. And if you have this shirt, I would say maybe Jesus needs a little more honor than simply being your homeboy on a t-shirt. And so as we move through this, how are we honoring him in all we do? And so turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. You see, when you're refreshed, you're able to refresh others. And I'd ask you this question. What are you refreshing the world with that only God wants to do through you? Again, I like to work with objects here. And what is this right here? This is Play-Doh. Yep. The thing that for some of you, for whatever reason, you were eating it in class. Don't know why. You were that kid. You know who you are. We'll pray for you. I loved Play-Doh as a kid. What I love even more now is watching my kids play with Play-Doh or Legos. They spent the last 2 days because school was out, and they played with Legos, and they got along fine, and there were no fights. Ugh. And they were playing, doing their thing, but they got out some Play-Doh, and I watched our 4-year-old, and she was playing away, and she's making French fries, and she's doing all this stuff, and she makes a French fry, and she's like, Daddy, actually, I want to build a snake. And so she does the thing, and she starts, and you roll it out, and then eventually you get to the weak part, and you're like, womp, womp, and you got to start all over. And as she's doing that, and I don't know where you're at as a parent, this is where I'm at as a parent, as I'm watching her, and it is not about the playing with Play-Doh. I go, man, I know that God has a specific purpose for her life. And so now I'm standing, watching my daughter doing this, and I'm praying in the kitchen, tearing up because I'm surrounded by estrogen, so I cry at everything. And so I'm just, God, please make me the man that I need to be so I can help impress to her what she needs to do, because you have a plan for her that you only are going to use her to do. And if she doesn't buy in to your plan, you're going to use somebody else, and she's going to miss out on what you have in store for her. And I pray that over every one of my kids. See, for many of us, here's my fear. My fear is, for some of us in the room, that we've neglected and missed the opportunity to be in the hands of the Creator, to be molded in such a way that He has, because He has a plan for you. And there's going to be moments where it's hard. No one throughout the context of the Bible and all the accounts that we have, nobody just got like an easy ride. Like John the Baptist, who was a friend of Jesus, followed God, did all that stuff, rah, 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 beheaded. Paul, who wrote much of the New Testament, started a bunch of churches. Everybody loved, yay, Paul. He finds himself at the end of his life in jail, naked, with no friends and nothing to do. You're like, yay, I can't wait to follow Jesus. But here's what I know is every one of the people that we read through the Bible, every single one of them, no matter where they found themselves on the ladder of what you and I would see as socially acceptable, every single one of them, when they chose to follow God, God did great things through them. Are you willing and really teachable and moldable to put yourself in the hands of the one who could mold you into what He wants you to be? Because we need you. We need innovators. We need people who will set the pace for art and culture. Most of the art that we see that portrays Christianity, most of it was done hundreds of years ago and done by people who loved Jesus and set the pace for art and design. When will the church and believers be the ones who set the pace in culture again? You see, we're supposed to bring God to culture, not hide from it, not ignore the news and hide from people, sing kumbaya, and get cooped up in our houses. What are you doing to be molded by God so that you can be refreshed and you can in turn refresh the world with something that only you could do? I'm not going to be at your job in the places with the people that you're at, but you will be. And you can do a beautiful thing if you're willing to be teachable. And so I would ask you, what are you doing to follow in the movement of Jesus? Because Jesus took time and took intentional time to be refreshed by God. This is what the writer writes in Mark. Immediately after this, if for some of you you're like, here he goes, this is what he's going to say, that we need to wake up in the 4 a.m. and we need to get on our knees and whatever. No, actually, this is a nighttime illustration, and so you're welcome. Because everybody's like, Jason always tells us to wake up early, which I would say most successful people wake up early, and so why are you sleeping the day away? But Jesus modeled both times, and so now it's actually double time. So you're welcome, or I'm sorry, depending on how you look at it. Jesus insisted that his disciples get back to the boat and head across the lake. They had gotten done teaching people across the lake to Bethsaida while he sent the people home. He got done teaching, healing, doing his thing. After telling everyone goodbye, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. This was at the end of the day. Verse 47, late that night, the disciples were in their boat in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on the land. He was alone with God. He was taking time intentionally, and Jesus was perfect. Never sinned, never did anything wrong, and even he needed time specifically alone. He didn't hop on a donkey and go ride around from place to place like you do to work. And you're like, I get my God time in on the way to work. Nope, he didn't do that. He didn't go, you know what I'm going to do? After I get everybody done, I'm going to just find like a quiet place just in the house, and I'm going to spend just a few minutes, and then I'm going to go about and think, nope, didn't do that. He spent time, goes, God, I will get away in solitude, and I'll be away with you because I'm not going to speak and say a bunch of things. I want to listen to you. How good are we at really listening? I learned this the hard way a few years back. I was in Colorado. I went through this thing called Rhythm in 20, where they take 20 guys, 1,000 guys apply, they take 20, and I was one of the 20 that got in. It was an amazing experience. I went through it the 3 years. In year one, we ended up in Estes, Colorado. It was a horrible view, as you can tell. It was awful. And so we were out there in the mountains, and you see this view. We went fly fishing. I caught a lot or none. Let your imagination run wild. It was 0. And so looking out and river, and we had a day where they took us out into the middle of one of the parks, and I did not know any of these guys, and so it was an introvert's nightmare. And with the guy that was leading it, his name was Tim, and he said, all right, guys, we're going to let you out in the park, and you have 3 hours. And so immediately, wanting to know all the details, hand goes up, and you could see the look on his face. Kind of rolled his eyes, but not really, because he loved Jesus, but was still irritated by me. And I said, hey, what is our plan? Like, what are we supposed to do? He said, you just go. So I raised my hand again. I was that kid in class, by the way. And just, hey, I said, like, do we have a schedule? He said, yes, we have a schedule. 3 hours, go. And I was like, what are we supposed to do? He said, that's between you and God. See ya. And so we went out into the park. And so I climbed up, and we got to see, like, there were these mountain goats that were out there. They were pretty cool. Don't get too close. And climb up, and they told us not to go out onto the rocks, but I'm sometimes not a rule abider. And so there's a picture of me out on the rocks there. You can see it as I'm looking down. You know, there's a couple times Jesus didn't obey the rules, but it was for good purpose. And so that was my purpose. And so I got out there, got on the rocks, and I'm sitting there for 3 hours. The first 10 minutes were excruciating. I looked down, I'm like, all right, well, I think we're good. I looked down, it had been only 10 minutes. And I was like, this is going to be awful. Like, I'm going to die out here. And the longer time went, and I just sat there and I just listened. And I wrote this down in my journal. I have to be serious about being refreshed because the mission is of eternal importance, and God wants to use me. Let me read that again. I have to be serious about being refreshed because the mission is of eternal importance, and God wants to use me. How serious are you about being intentional with God? Not to make you feel guilty, because we all have stuff. You know, for some of us here, we feel like we're super Christians. Some of us were skeptical. Some of us were angry. I get it. We're all here. How intentional do you really want to be? How serious do you really want to be about being intentional with God? Because over the next 3 weeks, we're going to learn a great deal about the nuts and bolts of that. But it starts first by saying, God, I want to be in your hands. I want to be moldable. God, do with me what you will, because I know that you want what's best for me. And you have a plan and a purpose for me. So God, do your thing. And wherever you say to go, I will go. Whatever you say to do, I will do. But I am in your hands. Even when you don't feel like it. Intentionality fosters moments to see his movement and to be what? Refreshed. Are you tired? Are you hurting? God says, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. But that choice is yours. My prayer is that you'll choose him. Thanks for tuning in to the Forefront Church video podcast. Our hope and prayer is that this has left you encouraged and challenged you in your faith. And you might have some questions and some ways that you want to figure this out, and we want to help with that. Head over to forefrontchurch.info, and there's a couple different ways that you can connect. click the Connect tab and let us know how we can be praying for you or a staff member can be contacting you this week. Maybe you have just been encouraged by this and want to support the ministry here at Forefront Church. You can click the Giving tab as well as other tabs that are in there to help you along in your journey with God. And so we're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in. And we cannot wait to see you again here online on the video podcast. We love you, and we'll see you then.